I was thinking about how we are in the 21st century and the year is 2024 at the recording of this video. And I was thinking about how lesbians date in 2024. And to be honest, it's been on my mind for a few years. Like when 2020 rolled around and when the pandemic hit, everything changed. The world is very different, and it has affected how we communicate and how we interact with one another. Just casually or even deep connections have been impacted after 2020. And the way technology has improved and social media has evolved, whether you notice it or not, it has changed the way we deal with relationships. And this is very important for us to acknowledge and also consider. Consider how this is affecting the way you interact with people and the way you think about relationships and how you develop relationships. All relationships are important. Family relationships, friendships, community is important. Your relationship with yourself is extremely important. And the relationship that you choose to have with another person romantically and sexually is crucial to how your life evolves. And for me, the most important relationship you will ever have is your spiritual relationship with the Most High God. But I wanted to put this video together for women who love women. And I want to talk about dating as lesbians. And you can invert your sexual orientation in this topic as a woman because you could identify as bisexual, pansexual, demisexual, asexual, etc. And I've titled this video, "Should Lesbians Use Dating Apps to Find Love?" My name is Giselle Wallace, lesbian life coach and author. Please take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do provide content from a lesbian perspective, but I am a life coach and I speak to various people, and I am able to provide content and insight that can be relatable to you as a same-sex attracted person, or you may be heterosexual and you have friends or family members who are LGBTQ. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Should lesbians use dating apps to find love? I am pretty old school when it comes to dating. I do not think that dating apps should be replaced with meeting people in person. And the reason why I say this is because meeting people organically and in person has always been around since the beginning of time. If you go back to the garden, in the beginning, the Garden of Eden, God presented the woman to the man. And the presentation is always special when you first meet someone who captures your attention. Meeting in person is really a palpable experience. We are spiritual beings and we can pick up energy very quickly. Some people are so used to focusing on what somebody else thinks about them that they tend to neglect and undermine their feelings and their thoughts and their intuition. And you do need to get away from that because you have to put yourself first when it comes to dating and relationships, not in a selfish manner, but in a self-interest manner, because your life is a priority and who you invite in your life impacts your life. So when you meet a person in the physical form, you see them physically, but we're just not physical beings. We're spiritual beings. We have souls, we have minds, we have hearts, we have a spirit. And we don't have that by accident. We're multi-dimensional for a reason. We're supposed to utilize all of our existence, all of our qualities to help us navigate life and also to protect our lives. So when you meet a person in the physical, you're not just going to focus on how they physically look. You're going to tap into your senses and you're going to tap into your intuition about this person that is in front of you. And it'll tell you a lot. So pay attention to energy. The thing about dating apps, it's virtual. And there's some people who are pretty good at reading photos and videos of a person. But these people tend to be very in tune with themselves. They tend to be very spiritual people. And when you're not dealing with someone who is spiritual, they don't get to see beyond the physical eye. They just focus on what they see with the physical eye, which is very limited. And that's why dating online can be very dangerous. So this message may go over some people's head. Usually people who are not spiritual won't be able to resonate or relate to this message, but this message is for who it is for. And everybody that I have dated, I've met physically. Now, every relationship that I've had with a woman, it was interesting how the relationship originated. And we all have our own experiences dating as women who love women. And the way we date is a bit different from the way heterosexual women date. And the reason why is because we were not always able to be open about our interest in women because we live in a homophobic society where being lesbian or being gay or same-sex attracted was frowned upon. It wasn't something that was condoned. If you were born, let's say, prior to 1989, if you were born prior to 1989, I hope I said that right. So if you were born before 1989, I'll include 1989 as well. 1989 and before, you understood what it was like to live in a world that did not have cell phones and that did not have the internet. Even if you were a baby, your whole makeup as even a baby, you were conceived into a world that did not use cell phones, did not use the internet, did not have social media. So the world didn't know about it. There were some people who knew about it, of course. And usually these people were the innovators of technology, such as Steve Jobs. He's deceased now, but Steve Jobs is the innovator, the founder of Macintosh. And he created the first computer, which is the Macintosh. And he did it in the year of 1983. So I remember Macintosh's computers, which they call them Apple computers or Apple products now, because Steve Jobs also was the innovator and the creator of the Apple phone, the iPhone. And I mean, he was a genius. He was an innovator. He created devices that no man has ever thought to create, and it has transformed the world in the way we communicate. He thought of a computer which has all of the information that you can possibly think of programmed on. And then he took it to a whole nother level by adding that same computer in a phone, because we all use telephones to communicate with people. But Steve Jobs created the smartphone, the iPhone, and he was such a brilliant mind that he said, I'm going to make a computer, but I'm also going to make a computer that we could communicate with other people on. And the internet was discovered, and the internet is utilized on the computer and the smartphone device, which led to social media, which led to dating apps. You follow my drift? So if you were born in 1989 and before, you were born into a world that the regular everyday person had no knowledge about the internet. They had no knowledge about smartphones. They had no knowledge really about computers. Only people, like I said, who were innovators and founders of this type of device, this game-changing technology, had access and knowledge of it because they were the creators and the founders of it. Now, I believe that God created everything. He created all of the technology. There's nothing absolutely wrong with computers and the internet and the smartphones. So don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it. God gives people the wisdom to be able to create these things. God is the creator. And he said, let us make men in our image and our likeness. That means God has put a piece of his spirit in every man. And when we tap into our creativity, we can be very lucrative, and it blesses everyone with our imagination and what we create. It's amazing. I love technology. I do. But some of it is hard to, it's a learning curve because it can go over your head, a lot of the information about technology. And that's why you have to pull out a manual and you have to study and research and understand it. That's why they create manuals, is because only the actual creator knows how the product works. Everybody else has to learn from the creator. But I said all that to say that our world is changing, and it has changed, and it influences and it impacts how we communicate with each other. Communication is so important. I tell you something that I just was looking at. I was listening to some content about the afterlife, and the afterlife means once we leave the physical realm of earth, we transition. We live for infinity. We live forever because we're spiritual beings. We're spirit. We have an afterlife. And I was listening to some testimonies of people, and it was one man who had a they call it near death experience, NDE. And basically what happens is a person dies, and they're considered um technically to have died, and they experience the spiritual realm, and they experience going into heaven, for example. Or some people experience going into hell. It just depends on the person. But this one man said something interesting. He said he went to hell, and he said when you are in hell, you don't get to communicate with anyone. And he said that there's people in hell that you see, and you know why they're in hell. And he said there's so many people in hell that you cannot count. He said there's not a number to count how many people are in hell. But he said as far as your eye can see, because your eyes are open, he said as far as your eyes can see, there's people there. And he said something. He said, even though you see all these people there, you cannot communicate with them. He said you're like frozen. You can't move, but you see everything around you, and you're not able to communicate with anyone. Even though you understand everything that's going on around you, you know why everybody is there, you know who the people are. He said because your senses, like we have 5 senses, he said your senses are elevated to a level that is beyond comprehension. It's nothing like what you feel when you're on earth and in the physical realm. All of your senses are completely activated. It's like overdrive. So he said, and he's a pastor, and he was giving his testimony of his near-death experience, and he said he went to hell. But the Lord was showing him the path that he was taking on earth in the physical realm. If he did not repent of his sins and follow Jesus, hell was his destination. So this is what his testimony was about. And he said, you cannot communicate with anyone in hell. He said, communication is a blessing. And I thought about what he said, and I was really examining what he was saying, and that makes so much sense. It makes perfect sense. And it kind of inspired me to do this video today. I thought about this video idea a few days ago, and I said, yeah, I need to do this video. So Communication is a blessing, and much respects to the brother who did that video. And he said it's very lonely and isolated. It's hopelessness, it's despair and hell. You will not be able to communicate with anyone. He said there's even people who are praying in hell and their prayers are in vain because God is not able to deliver them out of hell. Once you go to hell, that's it. So he said communication is a blessing. Now, the man, he did actually, he was just going through a near death experience, but he was actually able to come out of the hell experience. He calls it pre-hell, but that's a whole nother story. Pre-hell because you go to pre-hell once you die a physical death, and because we are still waiting on the return of Jesus Christ, nobody has entered into permanent hell yet, which is a whole nother dimension that he said is incomprehensible to humans. So, to make a long story short, he woke up. He did not die. Well, he did die a physical death, but the Lord restored his body. And he now is living his life fully for the Lord. And he's warning people, you know, to live right, to love people, and to live for the Lord so that you can make it to heaven. Now, you might say, why are you telling me this, Giselle? Well, I did say initially this message may go over a lot of people's heads because this is a spiritual message. And if you're a spiritual person, you'll be able to understand this. I believe relationships are very spiritual. Relationships are founded by the Most High God. He created marriage. And so this is why it's so important that when you date, you choose someone who loves God, and that you are someone who loves God, because dating has purpose. Marriage has purpose. And how we live our lives on this earth determines our afterlife. I'll repeat that. How we live our lives on earth determines our afterlife. Now, going back to what the brother said, he said communication is a blessing. So as I was speaking about cell phones, smartphones, we use the internet